whole class. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nguyễn Thị Quyên and my partner is Hoàng Ngọc Mai. Uh, Now I present about testing overall abilities. Firstly, introduction. To measure overall ability is needed a test with a number of different components. The notion of overall ability is direct related to the common sense idea that someone can be good at a language. There are four parts: uh, reading, grammar, listening, and vocabulary. Uh, it implies the final score. Uh, this type of test is highly economical technique based on the idea of reduced redundancy. Uh, First, variety of cloud procedure. The cloud procedure reduce redundancy. It is usually to delve a word every 7 words. This is example. Uh, Objectives to provide a measure of the underlying ability is content validity, there deriving from the fact that the lesson of every the word means that a representative sample of the linguistic feature of the text was obtained, and cloud tests were easy to construct, administer, and score. Different passive, different result uh, imply the context so that it reality really extended far from the fact. Uh, Different result may differ between students. Result of each early research would be a reliable and valid test of candidate underlying language abilities. Unfortunately, Cloud could not deliver on that was promised. The validity of the procedure was thus brought into question. Uh, Selected Jason Cloud. In fact, that Jason of every the word almost always pursue problematic items. Impossible to predict the missing word. They need to select the word to down from the outset. The person was chosen to provide interesting items. Native speaker could be expected to provide acceptable response to all the items. Acceptable response are limited in number. Call to close passive of first kind in the Cambridge Profile Science examination have a correlate very highly with performance on the test as a whole, and through uh, the conversational flow is used to reflect and hopefully predict oral as well as written ability. And there are two examples. Can you see? The conversational close practice turned out to be a reasonable predictor of the overall ability of overseas students who have already been in Britain for some time. It suggests that we should pay close check on texts that reflect the kind of language that is relevant for the overall ability we are interested in. And the third arises on raising close tie passage and there are eight parts. There are eight ideas. The chosen passage should be at a level of difficult appropriate to the people who are to take the test. The text should be of a style appropriate to the kind of language ability being tested. After a couple of sentences in uninterrupted text, Jason should be made at about every 8 or 10 words, and the passage should then be tried out on a good number of comparable native speakers, and the range of acceptable responses determined. Next to clear instructions should be devised in particular. It should be made clear that clear what is to be regarded as a word. Scholars are given a card with the acceptable response written on such a way as to line up with the candidate's response. Anyone who is to take a close test should have had several opportunities to become familiar with the technique. The more practice they have had, the more likely it is that their score will represent their true ability in the language. And final close tests are not direct interpretable and minor close items. This is an item that represents a exchange between two or more people with just the graph. This example, what time is dot 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 a quarter to 3. You look tired. Yes, I say dot 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 really. Late last night, had to finish that book. And we can cover just the structure and vocabulary that we want to, and include whatever feature of school language are relevant for our purpose. And this advantage, the context is very restricted. And next, the presentation might.
Hello everyone. Now I will continue our presentation. This is part of the C test. So, video ability of close intake of whole words. It is the second half of every second word is that is daily. Yeah. Advantage of the C test is that a check scoring is necessary. That native speaker effectively score 100%, and that much shorter, and so more passes are possible. Disadvantage, it is harder to reach than the slow passes, and correct response can often be caused by the surrounding text. Next part is direction. Direction was usual in the 1960s. At the end of the decade, it was challenged. Examinations of performance on dictation tests make it clear that word and word of orders were not really given. The candidates held hears only the chance of the style will have to be decoded into the succession of both a star and the recreates on the paper. About advantages, that in the predicting overall ability, listening ability involves it's what easier to create and not to score. Always remains that the score should be the number of words appearing in their organized squares. It work quite well, then performance is respond accurate, but it's at times consuming many pericles direction item. Dictation has the same disadvantage as flow, that the passes determine the limits of what can be tested. For example, the candidate says, when can I see you again? How about Thursday? The candidate hears, when can I see you again? How about a week on Thursday? And that is conclusion. Any methods present provide a general estimate of people's overall language ability because of the considerable recent interest in clothes, as it comes you to a learning exercise. It is used from mutual item formats. It can be most obvious choice. And simple graph filling method is mini clothes and mini partials dictation will give results at least as good as those of any other method. And this is the end of our presentations. Thank you for listening.